Ex-cult members of Reddit. What's your story? How did you end up in a cult? How did you escape? Not me. But my father was part of the love family that Charles Manson led. He lived in Death Valley with them for 2 years from ages 15 to 17. He was a runaway and went by the name Coyote back then. The story I was told is that he finally got out by being physically kidnapped by some friends. He did not want to leave. I was born and raised in a cult for most of my life. Though most people, including me for most of my life, think of it as a religion. I never saw any problem with it because it was just talking about the Bible and stuff. But it consumed my life. I was in church 5 to 7 days a week. Plus school and one-on-one Bible tutoring 3 days a week. Anytime I went to sleepovers or parties it was strictly with people in our church. I had the advantage of being poor. My parents couldn't afford to have me homeschooled, so I went to public school. I was instructed to not speak to anyone unless absolutely necessary while at school, which obviously didn't happen. From birth we were taught everyone outside of the church was unholy and directly influenced by Lucifer and his demons, and we must not listen to anything they say, which was all good and fine for a while until I wanted to take music lessons at school. Suddenly everyone in the church became very present in my life and would remind me that by taking voluntary lessons would increase my time spent with demon-influenced people. I just couldn't figure out how music class was gonna allow Satan in my life, and that's when me and my siblings began to really question everything. I decided to devote more time to the church and began really trying to learn as much as possible with the goal of moving up within the church. Most of the higher-ups didn't like all the questioning and probing. They could barely justify some of the basic principles when a 12-year-old girl would point out flaws in their reasoning. I hardly had access to the internet despite everyone else in my generation being raised on it, so when I got the chance I researched my religion and found stories from people that had left after realizing it was a cult. My siblings and I managed to convince my dad that it wasn't worth staying in something so corrupt. My dad was actually raised in a different religion and only converted after marrying my mother, so he was glad his doubts were being echoed by his children. My mother was upset with his decision but also firmly believed that a wife should listen to her husband. I haven't been back in years, but the church still tries to get us to come back. We've moved 4 times since and they always seem to find us. I was born into it. My mother got my father married within a month of meeting her. Had me 10 months later. And 5 more kids back to back. She was a master manipulator. A leader in her church. And took everything to heart. She and her group were very pro corporal punishment. And I did not have a happy childhood. She broke 3 wooden cutting boards on me. Threw me through a wall. And locked up the food. The wall occurred during one of her meetings where there were 50 or more women in her fucking barn. They all just laughed about how I had pigged out. It was Christmas. Somebody had given me a donut while I coughed up blood. I got out when she beat my baby brother so bad he went into a coma for a week and she was investigated. I was born and raised in a super right-wing sect of evangelicalism. Church of 70 to 80 people. Everyone homeschooled. Most other churches were viewed as heretical/of Satan. Growing up I was called into the pastor's office and interrogated for reading Shakespeare. Having friends outside of church. Not admitting enough sin during public prayer. Best thing that ever happened to me was being born gay. Parents sent me to Christian college like creationist/kick you out for drinking alcohol/having straight sex Christian lol. But then I got into a really good law school. Came out to my parents while I was there. Just like that. Almost every relationship I made between birth and 20 years abandoned me. Made leaving super easy and I've never been happier. Now I have an amazing partner. Awesome job. And wonderful friends. Some baggage is still there but I'm so happy to be free. Hey. As someone who also grew up in a super religious environment. I know it's tough to be yourself. Hope you are happy and have found peace. A family from my high school were Moonies. Really low key about it. My parents were shocked when they found out. The older sister married at 18 in a mass wedding ceremony to a guy the Mooners set her up with and now has a couple of kids. The younger sister, who was in my grade, moved away and broke with the cult. I never understood how it impacted her until she was in an interview for a show about cults. crying and saying how hard it was to leave and how it messed her up. It was chilling that I had no idea that this pretty, popular, friendly girl was struggling so much. I knew a girl many years ago who was born into a Mooney family. She never really connected with it, and as she got older her family kind of ghosted on her, but they would pop up about once a year trying to get her to settle in an arranged marriage to a Mooney guy. To my understanding, she still ignores these offers. Just so crazy. She was raised in this cult life but was such a well-adjusted person. I was born into Scientology. I spent hundreds of hours as a kid doing TRs and auditing. My parents spent tens of thousands of dollars on the church. Most of it as donations rather than actual services. I guess I have completely escaped it. I still live with my parents and the type of thinking in Scientology still crawls around my brain. I don't do courses, auditing, or events anymore. Scientology is supposed to save the entire universe. If that's the case, they should be handing out copies of Dianetics like hotcakes. It doesn't make sense to have such high barriers of entry if these materials can literally salvage the universe. I also noticed at school that people could be happy without Scientology and their lives weren't miserable. I was the only one that wasn't happy even though I had the tech. All those axioms about the world just don't fucking work. I lived with the Moonies for a few years. They do the smother with love thing and sort of guilt trip you a lot. The thing is, I had a lot of fun there. I pretended to believe their thing and stick around until I got tired of it and they started to get suspicious and see me as a bad influence. To say I'd sometimes buy some weed and leave for a few days. Then I'd come back. I didn't have to work much. Got to go to Korea. Have some road trips. Live in California on the cheap. The only thing I missed out on was sex. They are actually moral people who thought they were doing the right thing. No orgies. No sexual drama. It was straight as an arrow. In the end I felt bad for them. Their leadership was corrupt and funneled a lot from their believer base to the upper echelons. My wife was in a cult. Her mother still is. Most people refuse to believe it is a cult, but it is. She got out once I started informing her that the church's beliefs were so far beyond what the Bible is about. My parents were born into it. They had 6 kids, of which I'm the eldest. I realized over time that the place was toxic. Pedophilia. Especially in the leadership, and that the things we did weren't normal and we couldn't live properly within the cult. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't just abandon my family. While we were living in Europe, my parents had to consider a new place to live after our visas expired. We're all American but lived in Europe most of our lives. I was around 20 and I told them I was moving to the US because I wanted to go to college. They decided to come with me because they needed my help, and together we worked to distance ourselves from that previous life. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for more Reddit After Dark. Have a good night.